Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. We are on the 25th day of the Karen Read trial, and some new questions came up today. Will there be enough jurors to make it to a verdict? We're going to talk about what happened today. And the prosecution finally, 25 days in, told us what they think happened with John O'Keefe, how they think the accident happened. Did it make sense? And will it hold up on cross-examination on Monday when Alan Jackson gets hold of the witness? Tonight's show is absolutely packed. We have so much to cover tonight. We're going to watch together the video that in and of itself, that one video could represent reasonable doubt for any juror who wants to find reasonable doubt. The question is, did the prosecution wait too late to respond to this video? We'll talk about what happened with that. We're also going to do a quick summary of the day so you can catch up. So we're going to start with the juror drama. We're going to talk about what happened with the witnesses today. And then I'm going to debut a new map that shows the events and the time frame of what happened with Karen Read on that day of the very day that John O'Keefe's body was discovered. So we have a ton to cover. I'm checking to make sure that the sound is okay. I'm trying to head to the bottom. Yep, we're good. Okay, great. So what I want to do is start off with, well, first of all, even before I get started, I have great news for our members. We have a brand new special emoji that we are debuting. I'm going to add it to the stage so you can see it. It is the mods emoji with a tip of the hat to mamapinks and Marlon. Marlon designed it for us. And now if you're a member, you can use that emoji in the chat. So be sure to do it. Say thank you to our mods. And I'm so excited that we have this. So now starting, I also need to say hello and a special shout out to our first five. Loves My Angel Sue, Michael Lalonde, Beth A., Melody Perkins, who said it was her first time in the top five, and Anita Deckard. Delighted to have all five of you here and everybody watching. So I want to start with an issue that might seem small, but that could have an absolutely massive impact on what happens in the case. And that's the fact that the Karen Read case lost 2 jurors this week alone. We don't know a lot about why. Here's what we do know. When the curtain opened on the day today, the camera was showing Karen Read sitting at the defense table by herself. Her lawyers weren't there. That typically means that the lawyers are up at sidebar or maybe even back in chambers with the judge, but more often at that one of those infamous sidebars that we've heard a lot about. And they're talking about some issue that isn't something that's going to be displayed, but is something they need to resolve. Well, suddenly a person walked in the back of the courtroom, right behind Karen, being escorted by a couple of bailiffs. They walked past Karen, headed toward the bench or to the judge's chambers, wherever they were. We couldn't see them once they passed Karen because that's where the camera was focused. Well, it turns out this woman was a juror, and the judge is really upset that a juror has been shown on the screen. Now, and she had everybody go back, delete that particular video, figure out how to make it go away so that the juror would not be revealed, because the juror had a right to be private in that situation. So later, apparently, an additional shot also showed more jurors talking to the judge, all related to this one event. So the judge shut down, to respond to this, the judge shut down the broadcast feed for the first half of the morning. And then the second half of the morning, it was audio only. And then we got the court's cameras, which was really just terrible shots of the courtroom and the witness with really bad cameras. And the poor witness, it was like a shot up like this, not flattering for anyone. So when the court started up, the judge told the jury that the one juror was gone, and said it was for good and sufficient reasons personal to that juror. We don't have any idea what that means, but that, combined with the fact that the judge was talking to some jurors, made me think that there may have been some concern about exposure to information outside the case. But I'm 100% speculating on that. That's just where my mind went. I don't know why that person was dismissed. But regardless of the reason, no matter what the reason, losing 2 jurors in 1 week creates a looming possible problem for the court and for every party in the case, all the parties. Right now, the court has 14 jurors, which is 2 more than are needed. That means there are 2 alternates. We figure we're near the end of the prosecution's case, very possibly only 1 more day or at most a few more days. And we know that the defense is probably going to be about 4 days, but they haven't even started yet. So we are a good 2 weeks out, I would guess, from the jury getting the case. The judge told them again today that we were on track for them to get the case by the end of June. But then, of course, they have to deliberate. What that means is the judge, the parties need to hang on to those jurors, at least 12 of them, for 3 more weeks. And things can go wrong at any time. So that is a clear problem. It's a huge risk, particularly for Karen Reed, more so than for the state, I would say, because this case is going very well for her. She said so herself to the media yesterday when she was interviewed leaving the courtroom. And I think it's true. The chances are that if there is another trial, if jurors are lost, that this is going to be less favorable for Karen Reed. And the reason is that cross-examination in this particular case by Karen Reed's lawyers has been brutal, but the witnesses, having been through it once, should there be another trial, they'd be better prepared and better able to handle things. So the one exception I can think of to that is if something happened with that federal investigation we know is going on, and there were actually perhaps some kind of indictment or convictions or some such in the federal case, maybe that would help Karen. But in general, this has gone really well for her. And so losing too many jurors, not being able to go through with the trial, having to do this again, would be very unfortunate for Karen Reed. So the juror drama over for the day. The prosecution finally told us what they think happened about the case, how John O'Keefe ended up dead in the yard at 34 Fairview. We know the state thinks that Karen hit John O'Keefe with her car, but how exactly did that work? And that's what we learned about today. But I want to start with the first witness of the day who talked about cell phone data. She was a pretty dry witness, fairly technical. I'm going to spare you sort of the lengthy explanation of artifacts and the sort of confusing analogy to food in a restaurant. I'm going to go straight to what Jessica Hyde said. And let me start with explaining what this is all about, why she's even talking, why she's a witness. There's a defense expert, Richard Green, who says that he analyzed the phone of one of the witnesses, Jennifer McCabe, and discovered that she had made a very damning search at 2:37 in the morning. The damning search was "Has long to die in cold," or "How long to die in cold," slightly misspelled. So Jennifer McCabe was at the party that night where supposedly John O'Keefe was going to go in and have an after party with some friends. Karen Reed dropped him off at 34 Fairview to go into this house. The people inside say he never made it inside. Karen says she dropped him off. Her defense team believes he made it inside the house. The people there beat him up, killed him, and put him out in the snow in order to frame Karen and to protect the people who actually committed the murder of John O'Keefe. So now the cops, they say, are trying to protect those people inside. They're trying to pin this on Karen Reed. So if Jen McCabe actually Googled "how long to die in cold" at 2:37 a.m., that is huge support for Karen Reed's theory that this is all a conspiracy. That Jen McCabe, a relative of the people who were throwing the party, is in on this. It would be powerful evidence that Jen McCabe knew that John O'Keefe was lying in the yard dying before that morning when Karen and Jen with her and another friend, Carrie, arrived at the scene and found John O'Keefe lying there. That would be evidence that he was, in fact, murdered by the people inside the house, not by Karen Reed. So the prosecution says that's poppycock. This witness is testifying for the prosecution. Here's what she said, backed up by a lot of fancy talk. So at 2:27, this is her theory, or what she says based on what she understood from the data she looked at. At 2:27 a.m., Jennifer McCabe was using her phone to search a sports club for her child. She left the Google search tab open, the Safari search tab, I should say. Then at 6:23, just as she testified, this witness believes they were standing right beside John O'Keefe's frozen body, and just as Jen McCabe says, Karen Reed screamed at her to search, "How long does it take to die in the cold?" And at 6:23, Jen McCabe tried to type it in, but her hands were cold and she has MS and Karen was shaking her. So what she actually typed first was, "How long T-I, die in," and instead of cold, CKLD. Both sides agree on that. Now, at that point, the prosecution says Apple tried to auto-suggest how long to digest food because how long tie, dye, and cichlid seemed close enough, I guess, to Apple to how long to digest food. Well, that wasn't what Jen wanted. So the witness says what happened is Jen retyped it. And this time she typed in Haslon to die in cold. Still not quite right, but closer. And that's the search that showed up at 2:27 a.m., but it was really done at 6:24 a.m. So here is what her explanation is. She says, first of all, that defense expert misread the data. 2:27 wasn't the time that Jim McCabe made the search. It's the time that she opened that tab. You know how if you open a tab, you can keep doing searches, and then if you click backwards, you get back to your original tab. She says 2:27 is when that tab was open, and then searches were done on top of that. That is not, she said, when the search was done. The search was done at 6:24, just like Jennifer McCabe said it was. She also says that the defense expert is wrong when he claims that Jennifer McCabe then tried to delete these incriminating messages. The witness says that's not true, that law enforcement extracted the data while Safari was still open and running. That shut down the program, and the defense expert failed to understand that the program cannot tell the difference between deleted because the tab was shut down and deleted because the user wanted that particular message gone. And so the deleted message doesn't really have any meaning. Frankly, the cross-examination didn't get the testimony was a little tough to understand, and the cross-examination did not get very far at breaking it down. But that's exactly one of the reasons why courts are so strict about requiring parties to give each other notice about experts. It's very tough for a lawyer to cross-examine a witness who is supposed to be an expert if they don't know a lot about it. The way you normally handle that is you hire your own expert, and your expert explains why that person is wrong, or at a minimum helps you prepare. So that's when I think the defense lawyer, Yannetti, was the one who was cross-examining. I think they'll get back to it then. And I think that's when they'll really be able to hit it, is with their own expert. So that, I think we will find out more of what exactly they believe the response is when that expert gets up and why he thinks her criticisms aren't accurate. So now I want to get to one of the witnesses who, quite frankly, should have been one of the earliest possible witnesses from the state. As soon as they had the foundation laid, in my opinion, this should have been one of their first experts. This is Trooper Joseph Paul. He's a reconstruction and collision analysis specialist working for the police. And he talked about what he did was reconstruct what happened. It wasn't a particularly detailed reconstruction. It didn't go into the biomechanics of how the body moved exactly, but it at least started to make a difference. Let me go ahead and add to the stage so you can see some of the some of the exhibits that he put in. I'm going to show you this one first. Okay, so if to your left and toward the top, you'll see 34 Fairview. That's where the Alberts lived. That's where the after party was being held. You can see the words on there, pedestrian's final rest. And it's not actually where those letters are. There's a tiny little red arrow you can barely see pointing down to where exactly John O'Keefe's body was found. There was a glass cup found very near him, and you can see that indicated. There's another little tiny red arrow. You can see where the flagpole was that he was found near, the fire hydrant. Those are marked in blue, so they're a little easier to see, although you still have an arrow. You can see that the plastic pieces and a shoe belonging to John O'Keefe were both found down at the road, and that's what was indicated on the map. I'll give you a little closer up version. So you can see the arrows a little bit better here. You can see where the pedestrian's final rest was, the glass cup, some pieces of plastic all down near the road, and the shoe as well. You can see all of those things on the map. So this witness gave a sense of what happened with the body, what happened with the plastic pieces that broke off. And of course, the most important evidence in the entire case is the broken taillight on the rear passenger side of Karen Reed's car. Prosecution says, how'd that get broken? It got broken because she ran backwards into her boyfriend, hit him, killing him, somehow hitting his head. This witness suggested maybe he hit it on the curb, although I didn't really see any explanation for that. Just it could have happened. But that's how he hurt his head. He got knocked into the curb or some such by the car being driven by Karen Reed. Karen's lawyers say that's not the way it happened. He was beaten really badly inside that house, and then they just put him out by the curb, basically. And that's how he got discovered the next morning. That was, in sum and substance, what the witness had to say about the scene and where things were. So let me pull that out and talk to you a little more directly. Okay. So he also did some testing outside the Canton Police Department on Karen Reed's vehicle, on the car that the prosecution believes hurt her vehicle. And you may be thinking, okay, well, if Karen Reed's taillight really was broken, doesn't that absolutely prove that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe that night? That is certainly what the prosecution thinks, but we are going to watch together a video that the defense says shows the exact moment in time when Karen Reed's taillight was broken. They say it got broken more than that, but it got broken more than that later by the police because they were trying to frame Karen Reed. So we're going to start with this taillight, and I'm going to show you what he says, and then we're going to watch that video together that the defense says shows she broke her taillight at a completely different time. So the testing he did was really sort of general. He did testing. He said, okay, the car was mechanically sound. It was 7,000 pounds of functional vehicle. And the brakes worked, the backup camera worked. It had two cameras. It had a backup camera and then a 360-degree camera. He said the airbags worked, but they didn't deploy, which he said wouldn't really be very surprising in a pedestrian collision. You wouldn't really expect the airbags to necessarily deploy. He said it's typical that in a pedestrian collision, the pedestrian gets knocked away from the impact along with the items like taillight pieces and anything that was loose on the pedestrian may come off. For example, loose clothing, or in this case, a shoe. He says that's really pretty common. And the prosecutor said, and a handheld glass, because pieces of a glass were found at the scene. And the prosecution says that's the glass John O'Keefe carried out of the Waterfall bar at just after midnight when the bar shut down. So he still had that. That shows he didn't go in the house. That's the point of the prosecution. Now, there were also taillight pieces up further near the body. I expect to hear a good deal about that on Monday when we get to cross-examination, but we didn't hear a lot about it tonight. And you remember that we did finally get an answer on this. Remember that sort of magical glass that clung to the top of the bumper even though it went 60 miles through a blizzard and even was towed part of the way. Well, that was still sitting on, on the bumper when some of the police arrived to examine it. And he says he doesn't think that was glass from the taillight, which I think was plastic actually, but that he thinks it came from the glass that John O'Keefe was holding when he left the Waterfall Bar. So the vehicle had a dent. This is Karen's vehicle, had a dent, some scratches near the taillight and along the side of the car. He said maybe that came from John O'Keefe's hand. But the most important thing he talked about was the text stream data, which he collected from the vehicle. Apparently, her model vehicle was equipped with a device that records vehicle control history. And that's, in other words, it monitors people's driving behavior. When certain triggers are met, it records their driving behavior. In other words, when you get a little extreme or something a little different happens, then it records the driving behavior. It doesn't record every single input you put into the vehicle. So I'm going to show you some of that, but I have some people I need. First of all, we have a new member, Butterfly Girl, welcome. And we have Joanne D as a new member. Delighted to have both of you join. And Atticus has been a member for a month. I'm so glad, Atticus. That's wonderful. And is suggesting that we book a vacation in Marlon's village. Indeed, Marlon has created us a little village with all these emojis that members can use. And there are people in there. It's awesome. It's got all these little tidbits in there. If you look at it, there's a lot of hidden stuff in there, Easter eggs hidden in there, I think it's called. We play that at the end as part of the outro. So you can see it then. So you stick around and you'll be able to see what Atticus is talking about. And I want to thank Khadijah for the super sticker. Thank you very much. And let's see, who do I need to go? Ellie has been a member for 3 months. Fantastic. And please, I really agree with Ellie. Please do hit that like button. Thank you so much for reminding everybody, Ellie. I appreciate that. So, and we got gifted lawyerly memberships from Mama Pinks, who gifted 5. Thank you, Mama Pinks. She's one of our mods. And so put a mod emoji in for Mama Pinks gifting 5 lawyerly memberships, and Hope 8 Fear gifted 5 lawyerly memberships also. Thank you both. I appreciate that very much. So I'm going to show you some of the data that he showed us. There were he boiled down apparently a 1.5 pages of triggers. I'm not even going to show you that, and pulled out 2. I feel certain the defense will say, you picked these 2, but you don't know those were the very 2 when she hit John O'Keefe. But the prosecution believes they do know which 2 it was. Now, remember, when triggers are met, driving behavior is recorded. So here were 2 triggers that were met, and he believes he has pinpointed the exact moment when Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe. So we're going to take a look at that. This, and let me head over. Just to give you an idea of how really dense the testimony was, this was a chart he put up. Let me take out that blue so you can see it a little bit better. Really dense, impossible to read, definitely impossible to understand. And I'm going to show you a second one that pulled it down a little bit better, but it still was pretty dense testimony. Oops. Hopefully I have it. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to debut that. Oh, no, maybe I don't have it. You'll have to go with the really hard one. That's okay. I'm going to explain it to you anyway, because that's way too difficult to understand. Okay, let's try again. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to tell you sort of what he said, which I planned to do anyway, because there were no exhibits that really explained what he was talking about. So this is my best shot at explaining what he was saying. He talked about how what he was measuring was the accelerator opening angle. That means how far down are you pressing the accelerator pedal? Obviously, if you're pressing it really hard, you're accelerating hard. There's a big angle. If you're just barely pressing it, there's a little angle and you aren't accelerating very fast. So what this records is higher accelerations. For medium to high, it has to be above 30% accelerator opening angle. So the angle has to be greater, I guess, than 30 degrees. He called it 30%. And the first time he showed it was 34%. And he said that Karen Reed was doing a U-turn. 8 minutes later, though, and that's when he believes she pulled up outside the front of the house. 8 minutes later, there was a whopping 74% accelerator opening angle in reverse. That means that the accelerator was pressed really hard down as the vehicle was reversing. So she started off in drive, slowed to 0, and then went into reverse. They believe she was doing a 3-point turn to get turned around. So she was going 24.2 miles an hour in reverse. That was with that 74% accelerator opening angle, meaning she was going 24 miles an hour in reverse and she was accelerating pretty fast while doing it. The prosecution is going to say that shows intent because her speed was faster, her acceleration was higher than it normally would be, which shows she was trying to hit him. That's what the prosecution is going to argue. And the witness said that her speed dropped only slightly when she hit John O'Keefe. It dropped to 23.6 miles per hour. They said, well, that would be consistent with hitting a pedestrian because that's not a very big impact for a car. The car, a 7,000-pound car, is way bigger than a 200 and something pound man. And they said there was also a small change in steering right at that impact moment, as presumably she felt or the car felt some impact. So in total, she went 97 feet in reverse and hit a maximum speed of 24 miles an hour. She accelerated for the first 62 feet, and that's when she reached that maximum speed, and somewhere in there she hit him, and only then did she slow down. Now, Trooper Paul believed that John O'Keefe's injuries were entirely consistent with being hit by a car. Let me pull up those that I showed you just a minute ago by accident, but let's take a look. Yeah, there are the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm, and he says those are consistent with being hit by a taillight. I'm going to say I think the witness is going to have a hard time explaining that on cross on Monday because I just don't see how the arm gets scratched from one end to the other all that distance with a taillight. I just don't get it. It seems like an awful lot of cuts. But in any event, I didn't feel he fully explained that. And I think that'll be another place the cross-examination will go on Monday. Now, the witness thought that the dent and the scratches on the car, that could be from where he hit and then from his hand. Again, that's maybe going to be a little bit hard to defend because it's not easy to scratch a car's paint just with your fingernails. And it isn't like he had a lot of time to really dig at it. So I don't know. The injury to the back of his head, the witness said, would be consistent with him striking his head on maybe the pavement or the curb. He didn't have any diagram that would show that, though. He didn't point to a specific place. So here's where he hit, nothing like that. The prosecution wanted to ask him, well, isn't it possible? Let me pull that out. Isn't it possible that the ground was so hard? You know, there was cold, blizzard, frozen ground, but that got shut down and the judge didn't allow him to answer that question. The jury still heard it, though, so they understood what he was trying to say. So the prosecution wants to say that Karen absolutely should have known that she was about to hit John O'Keefe, even if the area was dark, and he showed the light was fairly far away. So even if it was dark and she couldn't see very well through her rear view camera, even if that was the case, it beeps as you get closer to an object and then beeps faster the closer you get. So she should have had warning that she was about to hit John O'Keefe. We then got, though, the real part of the testimony that the prosecution would love to put in. We got to see this without the jury present because the judge has not yet decided whether or not the witness is going to be allowed to tell the jury about this. The defense says it's way too late to name this witness as an expert to respond to this. And what he wants to respond to is that video where the defense says that John O'Keefe's car was parked right behind Karen Reed. She backed into the car, and that's when she cracked her taillight, not when she hit John O'Keefe outside 34 Fairview. So this is, I'm going to show you the video now. We're going to watch it together. It's done twice. You'll see the original Ring camera footage shown by the prosecution, and the defense has done an enhanced video where they blew up one section so you can get a closer look as Karen Reed's car clearly does have some impact with the car directly behind it. So the way it works is after midnight sometime, that John O'Keefe was lying. This is the prosecution's story, okay? The prosecution says Karen Reed hit him, and by 12:41 she was home. So that impact happened before that. It happened just after midnight on the 29th. She went out looking for John O'Keefe the next morning and brought in Jim McCabe and Carrie Roberts to help her look. They found his body outside 34 Fairview at just a little bit before 6:30 in the morning, a little bit after 6 anyway in the morning. So this video you're about to see is Karen Reed backing out to go see if she can find John O'Keefe. The first place she checked was a Waterfall bar. She didn't know where he was. So we are now going to see those videos. Let me add that to the statement.
I want to see if, for purposes of this voir dire, and in fact, I'd like to see the version that the defendants have with the focusing in on the tire.
Understood.
Both. Go ahead, Ms. Gilman, you show yours, and then I'm going to ask for the defense.
153.
That's the Ring camera footage showing Karen Reed's car backing toward John O'Keefe's car.
Now, Trooper, from your observations from this video, at some point, this vehicle either comes close or makes contact with Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to your observations of this video and your observations of the defendant's vehicle, at some point, have you also seen photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
Yes.
And is your understanding that those photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle were taken by State Police Crime Scene Services on February 3rd? Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with reference to your observations in this vehicle,
His point of saying that is that there really was virtually no damage, if any, to John O'Keefe's car. So that's the argument the prosecution is making.
I'm going to ask you is in regard to the significance that you observe, significance of the impact between the two vehicles. In respect to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, what, if anything, did you observe on his vehicle at that time?
At the photos or now?
Right now.
Oh, right now. There was snow on the vehicle.
And then with respect to the contact between the defendant's vehicle and victim Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, what, if anything, did you observe to occur with relation to the snow based on the significance of the impact between the two?
The snow doesn't move.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could press play at this time.
So you're going to see the impact. And on that, it's a little hard to tell whether there for sure was an impact, but when you see it blown up, you're going to see more.
All right. Can I see the other video?
This is the defense video.
Please.
The judge is asking to see. Judge Canone.
Yes, I think it's on, I know it's in evidence, but I think it's on your computer, your hard drive.
And you can see the wheel of John O'Keefe's vehicle move a little bit when it's blown up like that. So it really did make a significant difference to be able to see it a little closer like that. And then you'll hear the defense explain something too.
And before you do that, what is the exhibit we just saw through your IT person? What
Your Honor, it's
number?
the same exhibit. It has not been enhanced in any way. It was just magnified for purposes of this, of showing it. In other words, the magnification is not embedded in the video. It's
Okay.
the same video.
Okay.
We just magnified it.
I want to see.
So, and let me pull that out and talk to you a little more. Okay. Speaking of which, I need to thank Sassy KY Girl for gifting a lawyerly membership. Thank you. And we have some new members. We've got Need to Know, Karen Caddy, and Rashonda Edga. Glad to have all of you aboard. So the defense says that what you saw was testimony that was just in front of the judge. It was a voir dire where the witness was being asked questions so the judge could make a decision about whether or not to let this witness testify at trial. The witness is already testifying to testify to this particular issue at trial. And the defense says it's way too late to name him to respond to this video. You've known about this video for a long time, and you could have named him earlier, but you didn't. You can't just surprise us with that mid-trial. So the judge is taking it under consideration, and she'll let them know on Monday whether he can talk about that or not. He will be cross-examined on Monday, though, so we'll have that still to come to look for. And then finally, I'm saving what I think is the best for last, and that is a map I did that I think will hopefully be helpful last night. And let me go ahead and put this up on the stage. Okay, this is the map I did, and we talked about this last night. This is the evening events where you see John O'Keefe and Karen Reed leave the Waterfall Bar at 12:15. Her car is seen passing right there at the Canton Public Library. And then at 12:17, it's captured by a video camera outside a temple. They then went to 34 Fairview Road. Her cell phone picked up between 12:33 and 12:38 in that area. And then by 12:41, she was home at One Meadows Avenue, which was O'Keefe's home, but she also lived there. And so that was the course of events for the night. And we went over that last night. Now I want to do one. I told you I would try to get it done today. This is the AM map. And I'm hopeful that this will help everybody sort of follow along with what happened. You'll see we start out at One Meadows. That's O'Keefe's home. Karen Reed gets up. John O'Keefe isn't home, and she sets out to look for him. She leaves the house at 5:07 a.m. That's that video that you saw of her backing into John O'Keefe's car. There's a question mark below that because she goes back to the house, but that ring camera video is missing. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But 5:07 is when she is leaving One Meadows to go look for John O'Keefe. The first place she went was the Waterfall Bar. We know that for two reasons, because the Waterfall Bar camera captured her car at 5:11, and at 5:15, she was captured on the Canton Public Library video. Her car again was captured going by. Then at 5:18, her car was captured on the video camera outside a temple right there at the corner. What exactly happens between 5:18 and 5:35 is a dispute. The prosecution says, well, it doesn't take that long to drive to Jennifer McCabe's house, which is the next time anybody knows about where she was. Says it doesn't take that long to drive there. That's a matter of 3 minutes, 2 minutes. It's very quick. So it should have been 5:23 at most. It shouldn't be 5:35. What happened to that missing 12 minutes? What the prosecution says is that Karen Reed drove over to 34 Fairview and that she saw John O'Keefe's body, realized what had happened, or maybe even already knew, but she checked to see that he was still there, and then drove to Jennifer McCabe's house. That's what the prosecution says happened. Karen Reed's team says she didn't drive over to 34 Fairview. Who knows why it took so long? Maybe she pulled over, maybe she called people, because she did call a lot of people during that period of time while she was looking for him. And ultimately, she ended up at 12 Country Lane. Now, Once she got to 12 Country Lane and Jennifer McCabe's house at 5:35, Carrie Roberts joined them, and then the three of them went back to One Meadows because Carrie and Jen thought, well, maybe we ought to look at the house first. Maybe he's sleeping on the couch. Maybe he was, maybe he was in his car outside. Who knows? But maybe he's there, and you just him. So they go back to One Meadows to look for John O'Keefe. They don't find him there. That's the missing video, because there should be footage, just like there was footage of Karen Reed backing out of the garage. There should be footage of the three of them, and they say that Karen Reed pointed out to them that her taillight was cracked. She didn't say it's because I hit John, but she said, here, look, my taillight is cracked. That Ring camera video is missing. Now, Karen's team says that's not our fault. I mean, the prosecution thinks Karen deleted it intentionally and tried to show that she had access to it and could have done that. But the prosecution managed to prove that there was another video that was actually in the police possession. And that was actually that 12:41 arrival. I'm flipping back to the other video. When she arrived at One Meadows Avenue at 12:41, there should have been a video of that, but there wasn't. The only way we know about it was that Trooper Buchanan, when he wrote down his notes from watching the video, said, I see lights, 12:41, she's arriving home. If he hadn't written that down, we wouldn't know, because the video doesn't exist. So Karen Reed's team says, don't look at us if you've got missing video. If there's missing video, you have responsibility for that. You've proven that more than once. Then the group of them, and by group I mean Jen McCabe, Karen Reed herself, and Carrie Roberts, all left One Meadows and drove over to 34 Fairview. The reason why the prosecution wants to suggest that there's that extra time when Karen Reed could have gone to 34 Fairview, seen his body, and then gone to Jennifer McCabe's is because of testimony from Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts that as they were driving up to 34 Fairview, as they were headed in that direction, coming up to it, all of a sudden, Karen Reed said, I see him, let me out, and started screaming, kicking the door, demanding to be out. Neither one of them saw a thing. They said he was covered with snow. It was impossible to see him, but nonetheless, she could see him. And the prosecution thinks that's because she knew he was there, whether it be because she had checked for him that morning or whether it be because she intentionally killed him the night before. She knew where to look for him. So that's why that 12 minutes that's missing is so important. So that, and when they arrived at the 34 Fairview address, it was after 6 a.m. So that's sort of the lay of the land. And I hope that was helpful to you. I'm going to go ahead and pull out of this so we can talk more directly. So that is sort of, in a nutshell, the sequence of events. I'm also going to be doing a timeline. So I'm going to debut that probably next week. The judge gave us a schedule for next week. Monday, we're going to have trial. Tuesday, there is no trial per se. There are going to be arguments with the attorneys and the judge present. We know for sure that those are going to include the questions around the defense expert witnesses. The prosecution says the defense also named witnesses too late and has asked at least one be excused for that reason and others be excused for other reasons. So there are going to be arguments on that. Will the prosecution have rested? Will there also be argument from the defense that the case ought to be dismissed, that there hasn't been enough evidence? We don't know whether that's going to happen on Tuesday too. We do know she's set aside, so more than predicted, she set aside the day Tuesday for that. And then apparently Wednesday is a holiday, so nothing then. And additionally, they're only doing a half day. I think that's on Thursday and a full day on Friday, but I might have that backwards. So the bottom line, it's only 2.5 days of trial next week, plus 1 day of arguments. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat if you would. If you would put question marks at the beginning, that really helps me to spot it more easily. So I am over there quickly. Well, I do have a few more people I need to thank. Oh, thank you, Annie K. Appreciate your comment. Should be an award for making sense here, Lee. Good. I appreciate it. Thank you. And Worldwide Collaborations became a YouTube a member, and so did Suda Harris. And I think I already said about Rashonda. So I am delighted to have all these new members. This is great news. Delighted to have all of you. So let me head back over and see whether what questions people have. Tiff Knox wants to know, are locals going to demand Proctor resign? There already have been certainly movements within the Canton area to have their police audited. Now, he's with the Boston police. He's not with the Canton police because they had to recuse themselves because of the connection between one of their members and the people who own the home, Brian and Nicole Albert. But are they going to demand he resign? I don't know. I don't think that they will have to. This is my guess. I think that the prosecutors are going to find it very difficult to use him for a period of time. He's been assigned to the DA's office as part of what he does. And I think it's going to be hard to use him because of all the controversy. So I imagine that if he's kept on, it would be in some different capacity. So I think that will probably be what happens. Okay. Marlon put, yes, please do hit the like button. That would be great. Thank you. Will definitely help things. Momo Shark has questions about the medical examiner. Maybe that we're waiting to hear from the medical examiner. There are also text messages or at least phone voice messages from Karen Reed to John O'Keefe that haven't been put in yet. So we definitely have some more information, some more evidence that we think the prosecution is going to put in that it has not gotten to yet. Honeybee wants to know, do you think the needle moved at all for the prosecution today? I do. I do think that, Honeybee. I think that this should have been done in sort of reverse order. I think that if some of this had been presented first, it would have been maybe clearer for everybody, jury included, but public included, to understand at least what the government's argument is. I don't think it's been clear really up until now. So I definitely think this helped. I think too, it sort of shows the extent to which the conspiracy would have to expand in order to show that there was some kind of effort to frame Karen Reed. Nell is asking me, how can the state continue this case with a straight face? What with all the reasonable doubt their very own witnesses are casting about? I think they are in pretty deep. They've got, how many witnesses have they had? 50? I don't even know. It's a lot of witnesses. They have put so much work into this. I think there's absolutely no pulling back. They are all the way on this case. They absolutely have to be. I don't think they have a choice. And the defense is pushing hard for that reasonable doubt, saying we've got, and I really think closing arguments are going to be amazing. I'm also going to be doing a video on all of the things that have been investigation faux pas, where we are hearing about places where the investigators messed up. And that is clearly hurting the prosecution. Trooper Proctor being at the head of the line there, as you already know. Okay. All right. I already answered that question. I'm looking for those question marks at the beginning. Remember, I really need those. Okay. Do you think there is a legitimate case to dismiss as the Commonwealth has failed to reach their burden? Leona O'Brien asked me. Leona, it's so hard to win a dismissal. It just doesn't happen. Have they? No, I don't think they'll win that. I don't think there's any chance of that. But that doesn't mean they won't win with the jury. It just means it's a completely different sort of standard and extremely hard to win. It has to, for example, the judge has to look at it from the perspective of, was the evidence presented, whereas the jury is going to look at it from the perspective of, was the evidence actually undermined? Yeah, it was there, but do I really believe that now that I know it was Trooper Proctor who looked at the vehicle? Now that I know Trooper Proctor is the one who was near the taillight, do I trust them? That's something for the jury to decide. So my guess is there's not a real legitimate chance that that's going to happen. Doesn't mean they won't win the case. This is completely different standard. Bodega Lady wants to know, did the lawyers get the lineup of who's going to appear as a witness so they're prepared ahead of time? I think so. That really depends on the court. Some courts won't make the other side tell you, and that's brutal because you're trying to get ready for everybody. But usually the two sides, if nothing else, will agree to tell each other, because just as it's hard for me to get ready for witnesses if I don't know who's going to be up there, it's also hard for the other side if I don't tell them who my witnesses are. So usually everybody agrees. Sometimes the judge even enforces that you have to reveal your witnesses for at least the next day so that people can get ready and not waste a lot of time. Jen wants to know, will the missing ring footage be brought into evidence? I don't think so. What we saw today, that footage is already in evidence. The missing pieces are the 12:41 when Karen Reed arrived home, and then that morning when they all appeared outside her home and they were looking for John O'Keefe. That was Carrie Roberts, Jennifer McCabe, and Karen Reed. I don't think that missing footage is going to turn up. The troopers already come and said he tried hard to get it, and he talked to Ring about it, and it's just gone. And they wanted to blame that on Karen Reed, but frankly, I think that backfired because of the fact that there were notes in Trooper Buchanan's notes that said he saw that video. So I don't think that that's going to stick on Karen Reed as having deleted it. Okay, Jay Ray said, don't you think if he had been sitting on the lawn for so many hours that his body temperature would have been lower than 80? That is the temperature that they said he was when they got there. Karen Reed had been lying on top of him to try to warm him up. They said she pulled up her shirt and his shirt and lay on him to try to warm him up. I wouldn't think that would make a significant amount of difference. So he, as I kind of understood it, he wasn't dead, but dying at least at the time that the EMTs arrived. And so they did find, I think he did not have a heartbeat though. And he was at 80 degrees. I would be interested to know the answer to your question, Jay Ray, but I don't know. We did not hear from any witness, or at least we haven't yet, from the state saying how long it would take how long will it take to get to 80 degrees? And I don't know the answer to that. But it would be an important question because it would indicate how long he was lying there. Maybe it's not that exact a science. Maybe it depends on a lot of things, like the fact that he was wet, like the fact that he wasn't wearing winter clothing. All right. Let's see. I'm looking for the question marks. Here we go. Mob Moon wants to know, do you think the prosecution proved their case today? I think the prosecution did very well today, better than they've done just about any other day at trial. And I think we'll wait and see what happens with cross-examination on Monday. I think the cross-examination of this witness is very important. But even if the jury finds this witness credible, I don't think that proves necessarily that John O'Keefe was murdered by Karen Reed. But it definitely would give the jury the basis for deciding that if they chose to. Hannah Lewis wants to know, the data showing that the car bat 60 feet, et cetera, could that have been the tires spinning on the ice? I don't know. He wasn't asked that question. I'm guessing it's not just related to the tires, but maybe it is. I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question, Hannah. Hopefully that will be asked on Monday. I don't know the answer. Okay, Kathy Painter is asking Mama Pink how to get a free membership. So she'll stick that in the chat. And if anybody is wondering, it's something assigned randomly by YouTube. So we don't get to control that. It's just a fun gift if you get it. Darlene wants to know, doesn't her tail light look okay, not broken? I personally have trouble telling that it's broken in some of those videos. Once it's clearly missing, you can see what's actually gone. But I think it is a little hard to tell in the photographs. It remains mysterious that they didn't immediately take a photograph of that back area. Okay, a few more people. Oh, good. Thank you, Worldwide Collaborations. I'm glad you are enjoying this. That is fantastic. Sky Goddess is saying sweet memories this weekend. Thank you. I appreciate that. For those of you who don't know, my husband passed away about a month ago. So that I appreciate that very much. And y'all have been amazing. It's really, the support has been phenomenal. I've been extremely grateful for that. Okay, looking for the next question, and yeah, we'll do a couple more. James Bond wants to know, when does double jeopardy attach in a possible mistrial? Well, there has to be an actual, they have to have reached the stage of the trial that it would attach. And so double jeopardy and a mistrial are two different things. So I think, I'm not totally sure what you're quite, those are two separate concepts. So I'm not sure how to answer your question, James Bond, but I do like your name, your handle. CM Southern wants to know, if Bev lets Trooper Paul testify about the ring video, wouldn't it help the defense? Maybe he can deny seeing the tire move or the Traverse, that's O'Keefe's vehicle, damaged, but I clearly see two red taillights in that video. So and CM Southern is referring to the judge, Beverly Cannoni. And if she lets Trooper Paul testify about the ring video, would it help the defense? I think it won't help the defense for this reason. The defense is already going to testify about it, and they have somebody lined up to talk about it, and they presented it, and they're going to make those arguments. The only way the state really gets to counter that, maybe through cross-examination of the witnesses that the defense puts up. But also, I think it's going to be, the question includes that, I lost my train of thought. Something popped up on the screen. So Trooper Paul testifying about the ring video, I don't think will help the defense, because the defense is already being helped by that. That's not changing. This is the chance for the prosecution to respond. And the prosecution can only respond through this witness. They don't really have another way except the cross-examination of the witness put up. Okay, so Nana has an opinion. A lot of people have opinions on this case. It's more so than the average case that we cover here on the channel. Rosie Burns wants to know, will the jury be confused by this confusing testimony? The answer is absolutely yes. 100% yes. I was highly confused. I listened to several parts twice. I'm like, what? I'm not really following this. And the jury doesn't get the chance to listen twice. A couple things, there are 12 of them, so they can talk to each other and reason it out together. Maybe somebody remembers what another person didn't. But there's also that the point of it really, at the very end, the expert should summarize their opinions. And so all the rest of it is, I'm really smart, I know a whole lot, I've studied, and I looked at all this stuff, and here are the opinions that matter. Here are the 3 or 4 points that if you get these 3 or 4 points, you've understood it all. And that's what I tried to do tonight, is to take it to those 3 or 4 points. Ideally, that's exactly what the expert does, so the jury doesn't get confused. But it is always a little bit confusing. The whole point of an expert is they know something other people don't. That's the reason the court lets them testify. But for that very reason, it's tough for them to explain what it is, and tough for the lawyers to question it. Okay, Christian Paget wants to know, has Safari said if their search engine stays open, it gives incorrect search times? I don't think it was Safari. I think it was the Celebrite that was extracting that data. So I think it from the phone. So I don't think it would be Safari that would say that. I think it would be Celebrite that would say that. And I don't think that there's any intent to bring them here at trial, but I think the defense does have an expert who is going to say, I looked at the Celebrite data, and I would assume is going to say that the prosecution expert we heard from today is wrong. I think that's what will happen. Petmo Mom 2 is a new member. We are glad to have you. And Crazy Old Fort says, thoughts on the amount of pat snow under John O'Keefe. I thought there was frankly a little bit of uncertainty around that. I thought different witnesses said different things. We did hear his phone was underneath him, and some witnesses said it was grass underneath him, as if when he had fallen, there wasn't much snow. But I also thought when he fell, he was warmer, so he would melt the snow. So I didn't think that was particularly persuasive. So I don't think that I don't think there's been a sufficient amount of evidence about that made sense and that was sort of tested to draw any conclusions from that. Thank you, Jen Ken, for the super chat in honor of my husband. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so we will, Juneteenth. So perhaps it's June 10th this week. Maybe that's it. Okay. So final question, when Mystery Singer says, when Karen gets acquitted, do you think the FBI will indict the Alberts, Trooper Proctor, and Tully? So I think that from what I understand, Mystery Singer, and we don't know a lot about that federal investigation. We frankly don't know. It's cloaked in secrecy. We don't have access to that. It definitely seems to involve Trooper Proctor. I have not heard, and in fact, I think we heard the opposite. I think we heard that the Alberts were not subjects of that. I don't believe Tully is a subject of that. So I think there may be subjects besides Trooper Proctor, but not the Alberts or Tully. So I think regardless of whether Karen Reed is acquitted or convicted, that the feds will wrap up that investigation and we will one day learn more about what they found, at least I believe. I think we are likely to learn. Well, thank you all. We will be back on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern with more on the Karen Reed case. Thank you to Marlon and Mama Pinks for moderating for us tonight. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and you are about to see what I told you about just a little bit ago. Oh, I have 2 more quick thank yous. So you're about to see what I told you about, that emoji village that Marlon made. So don't tune out. You want to watch this entire outro so you can see it. Jen, I appreciate it. I'm glad you like the demonstratives. I'm a very visual person. The way I learn things is I see it. So that for me, that really is important. So I'm glad that it's working for you too. Gingy Prob says that the Commonwealth's presentation reminds her of students who don't do the reading. Yes, we are all confused. I do find it pretty confusing. So hopefully we managed to pull a little meaning out of it, but it was a tough day to follow. It definitely was. So, all right, here we go. The emoji outro. These are all emojis that members can use during our live stream.